Hold on one second. Let's see. All right, there we go. Let's see.
You're listening to PJ and Friends. PJ and Friends. The PJ and Friends Radio Network. Orlando, Ocala, and Tampa Bay. You're listening to PJ and Friends. PJ and Friends. The PJ and Friends Radio Network. Orlando, Ocala, and Tampa Bay. The views and opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of the station, owners, management, and sponsors. If you find any content disagreeable, you may exercise your right to change the channel. And now, on with the show.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're on the air at PJ and Friends. We're going to be having a conversation today. On the air, I have on with us. I have Darren and Mark. They're friends of mine that are a lot smarter than I'll ever be, and they are here to help me out and keep me sane and make me sound more intelligent. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello. What we're doing is we've been Orlando and the country and all that is facing some really weird stuff going on. You know, it's nothing. Some of it's nothing new. Some of that's nothing new, but the thing is it's like we have so many problems going on. How do we deal with them in a manner that one is has the ability to hold on one second. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback on my end. There we go. How do we deal with this? With what order do we deal with things? How do we deal with them? How do we give them time? How do we affect change? In addition to that, how do we learn from what we're doing and be respectful about it? How, do we grow? We're facing a bunch of things. Number one, we've got a weird election coming up. We've got two people, in my opinion, that really probably should never hold office, but we're stuck with what we got, best of poor choices, and even that isn't best of poor choices. We had shootings here, 49 people dead. We've had cops shot. We've had, a minority shot. The black community, and rightly so, is angry and hurting. And I remember as a kid never having a conversation with my parents about, hey, be careful when you get pulled over or anything like that. I would hate to, other families, people of color have those conversations. It's sad that they do. How do we deal with this? How do we affect change? One of the things I have a problem with all of this is I look at, I think our country, it's almost so much is going on between, people hurting from the sins of the past, the African American community being, we didn't treat them very well for many, many years, and we still don't. Things are better, but not as good as they could be, and they aren't where they should be. We've got politicians that are now, I don't think that they're going to help the situation much. I think they're going to cause more harm than good. We've got people taking shots at police. So what I'm going to ask you two to do first, in your opinion, is there any way in your experience that we can address these things? Or is there one thing at a time that we need to take? Is there a way to address them all, or or is there something we need to focus on first?
Well, I would say that it's very difficult to address any of the aspects of it, let alone trying to tackle them all at once. I think for me, one of the first things we can do is try to do something about gun violence.
Right.
Because I think that there's a tremendous amount of gun violence in the country, and I think that there are some fairly simple measures we can take to help with that. Although I don't know that our Congress is going to.
I agree. I think our currently there's they have political interests, all sorts of things going on with that, and certainly. When you have sit-ins and people demanding change, and we've got politicians clearly sticking their head in the sand and pretending like there's not an issue or not wanting to address it, and that's certainly not helping the situation.
Well, that also, the activism actually does a lot of good, even though there may not be anything concrete that comes out of those. A few weeks ago, we had a march that was from our state senator, Andy Gardner, is the state Senate president here in Florida. We had a march that started from his office on Michigan, went past Pulse, down to the office of the state representative where Pulse is located, Mike Miller, in just to call for a special session to address it. The only concrete idea that we had was just something small that we could, rally around, a concrete idea rather than just a general let's stop the violence thing. And then once we're in the special session, of course, then the lawmakers can address anything from magazine size to expanded background checks, etc. But no one wanted to act on that special session. There wasn't a single Republican state legislator that wanted to vote for a special session, except for a handful. And that was Mike Miller, who actually changed his mind and was in favor of having one. Now, they're still not having one. They're still not going to address it until next year, but that helped get awareness out.
Right.
The sit-ins that the congressional Democrats did, that helped get the awareness out. The sit-ins that Anna Esbani, she's a friend of mine, she works with Planned Parenthood, and a local activist, the sit-ins that they had at Marco Rubio's office.
Yeah.
It raises awareness, and it keeps this issue in people's minds. And the same with all the Black Lives Matter protests. As long as they keep on telling people what is going on,
right,
more and more white people will start to get woke and listen to
right.
some of this stuff and realize that, yeah, racism has gotten better systemically, but there's a lot of places that it hasn't got better, and in some places it's gotten worse. And that's a huge problem. And the other thing that I'll finish with is we have to know that as citizens, our country was designed to move very slowly on things. So instead of not seeing change within weeks or months, we might be looking at this as change in years and sometimes even generations.
Right.
It's a long struggle. And as long as we know that, then we'll be able to keep our strength going. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, and that's the challenge. I think technology today, the on-demand video, people are able to post things instantaneously and live in many cases. This has brought evidence that wasn't previously available. People, of course, the argument is when, for example, when shootings occur, we got Alton Sterling, for example, and we got Philando Castile. Philando Castile, he's in a car, he's pulled over, again, the police claim there's more facts, there's more video than we saw. I think it's irrelevant. I don't think you should be pulled over for any kind of a traffic infraction and be shot. And while the girlfriend was, she did what she could do. At that time, her hand was on a wheel and she's video recording it. And I think what's happening is we're able to witness in real time or very shortly after these horrible things that are going on. And while that technology is a lot faster, I agree. I think we're slower to respond. And that's a scary thing because we're now witnessing some things that that have made me very angry. I watch these people and think these poor people getting shot, and thinking, what a horrible thing! What a horrible thing to be pulled over! What a horrible thing! He from what I saw, what I witnessed based on the videos and stuff, he was doing the right thing. I'm armed. Apparently, it sounded like the police officer gave conflicting orders: was don't move, but get me your ID. In order to do that, he had to move. And that's where, and if there is any excuse or anything like that, that's where the confusion arose. So the man tried to follow instructions, and in doing so, the problem of getting shot. Now, my challenge with this is the police are supposed to be, quote, professionals. And if there are professionals, they should be able to handle themselves in any situation. And if you look at this video, the officer was anxious, he was nervous, he was scared, he was jittery. Not that he shouldn't feel those things, but he should be able to handle them a lot different than the average citizen. And if you cannot, you shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be in those positions, because if you're not able to distinguish between those things and handle them appropriately, and my problem is, people want to say, well, police have bad days and so on and so. I understand that, but you don't have a right to have a bad day when you're a professional being paid for a job. You're right to have a bad day, but you can't allow it affect the things that are going on during the course of
Exactly.
your day. And this poor lady, people were the lady that recorded the video, and it went live on Facebook Live, which is what we're doing here. The only thing she could do, because she couldn't move, because she might risk getting shot. She's got a child in the back seat. Here we are. This is again an area of the country where, even here in Florida, in Orlando, we have Pine Hills, which is oftentimes called crime hills. And why is that? Yeah, there's probably a larger amount of crime there, but it's largely low income, and largely people of color living there. But I don't think they should be distinguished that way. I don't think it should be ever distinguished that way. But you get where I'm going with this. What can we do to fix this? I mean, how do we change the mentality of smaller law enforcement, or how do we change these people? How do we get professional police officers? How do we get them to be where they need to be, so that this is a lot rarer than it has been of late?
I think training has to change. I think that training on de-escalation of conflict has to be more important than aggressive approaches to conflict. And I think a lot of the training that police get is in how do you deal with a hostile situation, not how do you de-escalate a potentially hostile situation so that it never comes to the point of becoming a hostile situation. And I think it's a scary job being a policeman. And I think that the more tools that police can have that enable them to de-escalate a situation rather than allow it to boil over is all for the good.
Right. Let's. I'm going to try to avoid bouncing around, because I've got a lot of thoughts going through my head, and I want to make sure I stay focused a little bit so this doesn't get confusing. And that's one of my weaknesses as a radio personality. Let's go back to Orlando, for example. The Pulse scene, for those that may not be from Orlando or Florida, was it 2 or 3 weeks that was it 2 weeks that the whole block area was blocked off and businesses had been closed out, but it was a long while before they could even get their personal vehicles and stuff out of there because of the crime scene. But when they were able to do that, how put together our government was for that one, but it took a horrible incident for them to be as friendly as they could be. For example, the mayor, Buddy Dyer, I'm not a great fan of his, but he did something very smart. He had people from the DMV there. He had people from, the clerk's office there. He had representatives from all these places, so that when family members had to go and claim things for the other people that may have passed away or may have been in the hospital, to make it easier for A, to either change ownership, or B, claim the vehicle without any problem. They had these things in place, so that process wasn't a frustration for them. My problem with this is, while that was a great thing, this should be an everyday occurrence. This is part of it. This is part of it. Shouldn't take something out of the ordinary for something that should be ordinary to be done. And I know that seems minute, but this is what I'm talking about. It's not just police. It's not just law enforcement. It's government altogether. And this is why it links back to, we're now facing elections with two people that I don't think are going to get us anywhere, probably in trouble. But if we can be that thoughtful, why can't we do this all the time? Why does it have to? I realize there's fraud and games and all that going on out in the real world, but why can't this be as friendly all the time? And I believe that customer service and kindness and friendliness and simplicity, and I think it's important. I think that goes a long way to creating an environment and a community that is welcoming. What are your thoughts?
Well, in a lot of ways, what you see in the local government does run very well. I've seen a lot of systems being put in, just small things here and there that have made our county government and our city government more efficient. I think that we as citizens tend to focus on the negative before the positive.
Right.
And you can also look at it as our presidential candidates that we have. We have Hillary Clinton, we have Donald Trump, where people focus on the negatives of both of these candidates, but we forget that Hillary Clinton was leading the charge to get children's health insurance. And there's a lot of other accomplishments. I'm not going to turn this answer into a pro-Hillary answer.
Right.
You look at Trump, I'm sure there's some things that he's done, but I can't think of any right off the bat. So a lot of times we gravitate to that. And also the response, the rapid response was not only for law enforcement, but it was a rapid response amongst even outside the government, the local, the county and the city government. So everybody came together. I've never been prouder of being in Orlando and experiencing the aftermath of that. And I think that the profound sense of loss is what kind of made us all come together. So I don't necessarily see that things are getting worse, at least locally. That's not to say that they aren't in other places,
right,
deteriorating, and things are in some ways. But there's a lot of hope still out there. Is what I'm saying, I guess.
All right, and just a reminder, those of you that are listening, if you want to participate, you can do so. You can call in at 407-545-7853. I do have Skype available. However, the phone number works better than the Skype actually side does. So I would recommend calling in if you want to speak up. And if you want, you can send us, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, you're more than welcome to put a comment in. I'm watching them. And if you have something you want to say, we want to hear from you. A couple of days ago, I was having a conversation with a friend. I used to work with her at CenturyLink, and she's gone on she's now, I think, a 911 operator for, I'm not sure which county, but one of the counties. And however, she's just recently become one. Of course, she's all now pro-blue, and I'm not sure she wasn't before. And I had made a comment. Obama had been at the funeral to the police officers in Dallas, and he made a comment that all officers deserve respect. And my problem, and I made a comment, and the thing is, when I was a kid, my parents taught me respect is earned. And and I'm talking about this because I'm open to change, or maybe I need to find a different thing that I'm saying in relation to this because it hit a nerve and I didn't mean for it to. I don't believe anybody automatically by default deserves respect. I mean, I don't want to disrespect them. I'm not going to walk out and spit somebody in the face, and I'm not going to take away their accomplishments. But we've had some pretty nasty people wear the uniform. We've had pretty bad people become military guys. We've had, pretty bad politicians. We've had pretty bad doctors who've done things that they shouldn't have done. We've had, so by default, I don't believe respect is automatic. I think, though, common courtesy is. I do believe that if we were kinder and nice, please and thank you, hi, how are you, welcome, all that stuff, I think would go a longer way than most of the stuff that we hear nowadays. When someone does something wrong in traffic, you're quick to yell at them versus, they might be in a hurry to get somewhere, so maybe someone's in a hospital, who knows what it is. And I don't mean to take away from anything, and maybe I need to change it. I did a little research. I looked up the definition of respect, and it just meant acknowledging one's accomplishments and their status and their achievements and where they've gotten. And so over my course of doing these kinds of things, I've interviewed law enforcement, and one was the police chief for Leesburg, and I did my research for this guy, and this gentleman had he'd extended education. He had been, many college degrees he had held. He had many workshops he worked with, different conferences he attended and different certifications he'd received, much like a doctor might, and he was really very well versed. And I don't want to take away, and I don't mean disrespect to them. I just don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I need to find a different way to say this, because maybe it's not respect that I don't mean to give them. I just don't think by default we need to put everybody on a pedestal. We don't need to be in awe of them. We don't need to be, I don't know, maybe you guys can help me with this. And I'm not, again, I'm open to discussion with this. I don't want to, I don't want to take away from what people are doing, but at the same time, I don't think blindly giving people this pedestal that they're on is a good thing, because it takes away from the word respect.
Well, I think the fact is that we put our faith in them to protect us and to serve. And while individually there may be some officers who don't deserve respect because of their actions, collectively I think they deserve our initial respect because of what we're asking them to do.
Right.
If you go to a doctor, you initially should respect the doctor and their opinions until you find out that they're incorrect about what they're talking about.
Right.
And then they lose that respect.
Right.
So I think it's more a matter of what can someone do to lose your respect rather than not respecting them initially.
I agree. I may need to find a different word to describe what I mean. I guess what I look at is when and maybe it's my fault, maybe my stereotype of what I think are personality traits of a police officer that might be questionable. And I look at these guys that want to, in my opinion, present themselves as badasses. The guys that wear these crazy sunglasses, like they're the Terminator, and they're aggressive, and they're and I just look at them thinking, I remember as a kid, officer friendly. I remember you want to be able to approach these guys, you want to be able to feel comfortable talking to them, you want to ask them things, I know this may seem crazy, but I want them to be while I want them to be tough when they need to be, I'd rather them be friendly and cordial when they can be. I'd like customer service to go along with what they're being paid for. But what I'm seeing more often than not are people that are and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's just me. And again, you're right, it may be the select few, and obviously the guys doing it right you don't hear about because they're doing their job. It's the guys that are making mistakes that you hear about.
All right. Well, again, going back to, as human beings, as Americans, we focus on the negative aspects. A lot of times those negative aspects are kind of just reinforced falsehoods that we've heard a lot over time. So in retrospect, with Hillary Clinton, she's had 25 years of Fox News bashing the crap out of her.
That's true.
With Donald Trump, he has his own mouth. So in a way, I can think back of every interaction that I've had with a police officer, and I would say more often than not, they have been less than friendly. Sometimes, I think rarely, I've had a really friendly experience, and a couple times have been really awful experiences, and very denigrating, very disrespectful off the bat without me doing anything.
Right.
I don't need to entertain the notion of, if I was a different skin color, how would that go, of course. But if you think of it this way, the officer friendly that you remember of your youth versus the officer that you see now, when you were a child, you were never pulled over for going 5 miles over.
Right.
As a child, you never had to call a complaint in and talk to an officer because your neighbors were being loud. So the officers that you talked to when you were a kid were, of course, very friendly, because adults are generally really friendly towards children, and in a professional setting like that. So if we approach that as not saying, to kind of look and say, okay, basically you can have two thoughts in your head, which is the police are not all horrible folks that are intent on imposing their will on us.
Right.
And you can also entertain the fact that there's a segment of our population that is being targeted very unfairly by a segment of our police population. And that needs to stop.
So, and I think going over, taking this back to the overview of what this was meant to be, with all the things going on right now in the world, and what I mean by that is we have the shootings, we have the politics being the mess that they are, we have, gay rights, we have, people worried about the term Black Lives Matters, and I understand, but at the same time, it's just a highlight. It's just to highlight the segment that at that moment feels to bring attention to that segment of our community that is right now in the forefront, and they want that to be dealt with, and they don't want that to die. They don't want people to forget that this is what's happening, and they want things to be done. And here we are, years later, from the St. Louis shootings in Missouri, and here we are. We're still having these same issues. Not that it's ever going to go away completely, and I wish it would, but here we are still having these problems. And I hate the fact that we get caught up in the craziness of terminology versus actually getting something done. The craziness of what are we going to call this versus hey, you know what? I don't care. Let's call it blue, green, and yellow. But the problem is people are still being shot. How do we fix this? And let's not let this go away. We're not going to let this go on page 6 because we need this in the forefront right now, and we need it to stay there until we're able to make some changes that matter. One of the things I think about is when many years ago I used to be in the customer service field, and when we would get a caller that was angry or upset, and we could tell if they were miserable in their life, they would call, and what they would talk about, what they'd complain about, really would have nothing other than they just wanted to complain. If they were happy in their life and they still had a problem, the way they dealt with us was a little more peaceful, a little more amicable, a little more respectful. And this is the same way. Let's look at it. The job market is horrible. There are no jobs. There are very few, if any. And the few that are out there are not really paying people what they can live on. Education is harder than ever to get. It's expensive. It's not cheap. And while the government waves all these wonderful things they want to do and give and all these things, but the truth of the matter is it's not simple. You add to that, people are struggling, they're fighting, they're trying to make their daily life. Then you got a segment of our community that is feeling they're being shot, and we're seeing it on TV, we're seeing it live. We're seeing retaliation to police officers. We have a government that we have to rely on, hopefully, to make these changes, but then we have to see all the junk on TV. We have Trump, and we got... And my biggest challenge with Hillary, I guess, again, best of poor choices. For me, with her, is I would like somebody new. I would like somebody that might have some other, we know what her agendas are. I guess maybe that's good for us that we know that she has agendas, but I would like to see something new. And I said that same thing when I said, boy, maybe Governor Scott, and I didn't vote for him, but maybe Governor Scott would be a good thing because he's an outsider. But then, of course, be careful what you wish for.
Sure.
That's what you get.
So what do we? So with all these things, if people had decent jobs, if they were able to feed their families, if they were able to get the education they needed, if we were able to make people feel safe and secure, they'd be happier and better, and wouldn't need to be fighting for every scrap of what they got, and for some of them lousy scraps of what they have, or to hold on to what they have. It seems overwhelming to some extent with all the things that need help. How do and then. I had a friend, I won't name names, but I have a friend on Facebook a couple weeks back complain about people wanted to forget about the Pulse thing. And they were angry because, no, we should never forget. And I understood what people want. We have people out there that can't handle the pain. They can't handle it's overwhelming for them, or maybe it's something beyond them, and they're kind of not wanting it in their face every day. We're still having marches every day, and we don't want it to go away. We need, just like Black Lives Matter, we want this in the forefront so things change, so we never forget, so we move forward, and so we learn from these things, and that by being upfront, by being in our face, and by not letting it die and forget, and keeping the wound somewhat fresh, it's more likely change is going to happen, or at least it's in people's minds, which is more than it's been for a long, long time. But at the same time, you got people out there that can't handle that, in their face every day. When 9/11 happened, for weeks straight, NBC, MSNBC, all the channels had replays, and people just had to walk away from their TV because it was depressing. It was hurting people. How do we balance keeping things fresh and keeping the wound open to a certain extent, but without re-hurting people, without re-damaging them? because that's almost just as bad as shooting them again, or reliving it. You follow me?
Yeah. That's a lot to deal with, and it does and can seem overwhelming. I will fall back to my usual position when people want to change things. I tell them there's an election coming up on August 30th. And they probably haven't heard of it. It's a primary election, and there's also elections for county offices. If you're registered in a party, you get to choose who your standard bearer will be to go into the November 8th election with your congressional candidate, your Senate candidate, your everything down to your state rep candidate. People that vote in these elections are generally old white people.
True.
And I mean, this is a broad brush on old white people because I know some old white people who are not like this, obviously. But as a general rule, old white people are fearful of crime. They might own weapons, so they want to make sure that guns are keeping them safe. And they want to talk to somebody that will make certain that law and order will be preserved. And, you can read as much racism into that statement as you want, but the problem is until numbers of younger folks, numbers of minorities and other people like that, until they get out and start voting on par or more than these older white folks that vote in every single election,
right,
including the off-year elections, then we'll see a little bit faster pace change. But until then, everything is going to be a struggle just to achieve a small victory.
All right. Just as a reminder, guys, if you want to participate in the show, feel free to call in 407-545-7853. Or I see people posting some comments on Facebook, All Lives Matter, things like that, and we appreciate that. But if you have something you want to contribute, please feel free to call. If you don't want to, not a problem. Of course, other people.
Did someone post All Lives Matter on the Facebook thing?
Yeah, all life matters. Yeah.
All right. I just want to address this because the problem that a lot of white people have when they hear Black Lives Matter is white people, they see let me put it this way, black people want justice.
Right.
Say white people
right.
when Black Lives Matter. But white people see a just before Black Lives Matter.
Right.
So to them it says just Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Which is not the case.
Right.
And it's a little bit infuriating to see that sometimes.
And I don't think, here's the thing, it's kind of like, and I apologize about these weird analogies that I bring into you, but it's kind of like when people respond to texts and emails for heartfelt and meaningful things, and then they get all angry about it because people take things as they're written or as they're feeling at the time. And the challenge with our country is I don't think people know how to write or say how they feel or write what they mean. And so they catch these little phrases and they put them out there and they don't, they aren't, they're so ambiguous that they can be taken either way. I don't think, I happen to know the person that wrote this, so I don't think they mean what you think they mean. I think they're trying to say they agree, but all lives matter. But that's not how it's received. And because it's so raw, like I said earlier, the fact is the Black Lives Matter movement, in my opinion, is just a highlight of the fact that segment of our community is feeling the pain. They are having challenges. Again, like I said earlier, my mom and dad didn't sit down with me, having warned me about the police as I went out the door. And as I listened to, if I remember correctly, it might even been President Obama, somewhere along the way, I think they had talked about how they had talks before they were in the office and all that, with their own kids about don't do certain things. And, black officers would have the same talk with their kids, even though you're my child. When you go out, if you get pulled over, be careful, be respectful, all these things. Not that every child should be respectful, but they're having these conversations that other segments of our community don't necessarily have to have or wouldn't normally have to have. And the fact that those are even a conversation that needs to be had says there's a problem, says there's an exception that shouldn't be there, and they should be able to go out about their day. They should be open the door, have a beautiful day, and go out and not be thinking or even in the back of their mind. And the bottom line is they can't. They have to worry about who am I going to run into today? If this happens, what do I got to do? And that's got to be a horrible feeling to have that conversation. It's got to be a horrible thing to even have to be there. And I wish to God, I could change things. I want so badly to make a change, and I realize I'm just one person. And even myself, as I talk about this, I'm probably not doing a very good job at it. And that's what I think the problem is. I think a lot of us are all saying the same things to a certain extent, but I think we're missing the mark with each other. And because of that, it's rubbing the wounds are still open, and we're inadvertently throwing salt and hurting people. And I think if people were happy, if they were healthy, if they were safe, if they felt safe, they felt welcome, I think things would be a lot different, and we'd get a lot further along than the stuff that we're going on. Let me give you an example of how things have changed. And this is me. I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 this year. And my best friend, Matt, his mother has been sick. And literally 6 times in the last 60 days or 30 days, been in and out of the hospital. And the ambulance has come to the house so much. There's this family across the street that we don't talk to our neighbors. Why? I don't know. When I was a kid, we used to sit on the stoop and talk to people. Here, we don't do that. You don't know, and doesn't matter. But as the ambulance was pulling away one day, the kid that we'd never talked to, but we've seen him playing in the yard, ran to the ambulance, gave it to the ambulance driver, a nice little thing that they quickly colored a thing for Matt's mom, and saying, we're so sorry you're not feeling well. Please feel better. It was a horribly written crayon, but it was a beautiful thing. And, we went over and thanked him and all that. But up until that point, we had no contact with people. Hold on a second. We have a caller calling in. Let's see who this is. Hold on a second. I just hung up on the other two. Caller, you're on the air.
No, this is Mark.
Oh, did I lose you? I just hung up on Darren, so there you go.
Oh, my goodness.
It's okay. He'll call back. He knows how it is. He knows the rules. So anyway, that's where we are. When I was a kid, we don't know our neighbors anymore. We're afraid to talk to our neighbors. I think if the world's happy, people are comfortable, I think we'd be a lot better along. And I think, how do we get there? And I realize there's a long road. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Help me out here. I'm yapping.
Well, I think there are things that we can do. It's a matter of individuals taking collective action. It's one of the things that I think made me support Bernie Sanders when he was running, is that he had a lot of ideas for things that would make people feel safer and more comfortable in their lives, and would redistribute some of the wealth that has accumulated at the top to people who are at the bottom, so that they wouldn't have to feel like they're one minor catastrophe away from complete and utter devastation.
Right.
And I think a lot of people just feel like they're on the edge right now. I think a lot of the people who are going to vote for Trump are people who are on an economic edge and feel like things have changed and have disadvantaged them. The problem is, what they don't realize is that the advantage that's gone on hasn't gone to black people or Mexicans or
right.
Muslims or anybody
right.
like that. It has gone to the top. And so instead of us all banding together to deal with the things in a common fashion, we end up instead with us fighting each other,
right,
instead of looking at what really the problem is.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. People forget that originally America was a melting pot, and it still is. And it's all these different cultures and things that they brought that made us unique. And I remember, again, people don't do this anymore. When I was a kid, I was born in New Jersey. I was raised in New Jersey till I was 7. And the neighborhood had a block party where they blocked the two ends of the street, and we didn't even know on our street. And I was 7 years old, and we had an Indian family, and I just learned in school how India cows were sacred, and I got to talk to people. They brought different foods, they brought different things, they talked a little differently, but it was kind of cool because I got to talk to different people. we had a British family. It was kind of weird on this one freehold New Jersey street. So many different walks of life, older people that had been in the military. And as a kid at 7 years old, you don't have the filters that you do, but you also don't know enough to be rude and all that. At least back then you didn't. And so I was able to ask questions and talk to people, and it was a great thing. And just that's why I remember it today. And when we look at the Muslims and we look at all the different people that come to this country and that are here, it adds to those cultures add to us as a whole. Are there things that are annoying? Probably they are. But, people who bite their nails might be annoying. People who chew with their mouth open might be annoying. Well, when they're doing those things, you walk away. But I don't think we need to be evil and mean to people. And I think, when did different become a problem? When did different become wrong?
Humans are very keyed into differences.
Right.
And we are very keyed into fear. It's a very big part of our brains, or at least a part of our brains that can take over very easily. So fear and anger are emotions that cause us to kind of run away with our thoughts. And we're not really thinking, we're feeling, and
right.
We're reacting. And I think that's a problem with humans, is that we're kind of wired that way.
Well, but again, maybe it's just because I was a kid and it was that one instance. But maybe it's just my family. My parents were always, my dad. I was given up for adoption when I was 2, and I was adopted when I was 4. But the family that adopted me were great. My dad. Italian family, you'd go there and you'd have dinner at 3 and get up at 9. They had a neighbor that had the traditional Italian store, and they lived above their store, and you went next door and they had all the good. You're a kid, they had ice cream and all the things you could eat and you shouldn't have. They were always welcoming. They were even, one of the very first jobs I have, we'd moved to Pembroke Pines, Florida, down in South Florida. And I was going to Pines Middle School, and they had a job, a summer job thing for kids, one of your first jobs, and it was with the Public Works Department. And I was there, and basically we changed oil in mowers, and some of us went out and picked up trash and raked leaves and things like that. I was in the office one day, and they were talking off-color jokes, and it bothered me. I didn't say anything, but when I went home, I talked to my parents about it. And I was raised that I didn't like the off-color jokes. I didn't like that. I know people think it's funny, and even as a kid, I just didn't think that was and have we changed? Has the world changed, or was I unique, or was I just lucky that I had parents that were that way? Was my environment that cleansed of these things, or has it always been? Or are we just now more aware because of the technology and the world the way it is now?
Not sure. I think we were a less homogeneous society actually years ago. I think that people are freaked out by the fact that we have so many different groups that are part of our society. I think it makes people scared for themselves.
Right.
It's fear of the unknown. So I don't know. I think maybe you did have a different perspective than other people get. Very possibly.
And that's the thing. When I was, I think about the things my parents told me when I was a child. My mom was an RN. There is an RN, and she one day sat me down and taught me how not to touch the stove when we'd play acted, things like that. And out of the blue, she told me again, I was probably 6 or 7. And was telling me, well, if you ever see a black person, don't call me N-word. And why she would ever think this, why she would ever, hold on, I think this is Darren. I'm going to try to do this without hanging up on you. Darren, is that you? Darren?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. That was my fault. I hung up on you.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. What did our caller say? I missed that.
No, it was Mark calling back to complain about you.
Oh, okay, good.
So no, we were talking about. I don't know if you were able to hear, but we were talking about the history and You know, I was talking about when I was a kid and the things I was taught as a kid and how we had block parties. And I was raised in New Jersey. And what I'm talking about now, though, is as a kid, out of the blue, my mom would, you know, when she was teaching me about not touching on the stove, at the same time, remember, don't ever call a person of color the N-word. And I don't know why she ever did that, because it's not like I was, you know, I don't understand why out of the blue she felt that. I don't know what, maybe something had happened that day. I don't know what. But it wasn't, and here's the thing, I would never have thought about that until she said that. You know, so I don't know what had happened. Maybe she'd witnessed something. Maybe she had seen something. Who knows what? Maybe that day, because she was a nurse, so it may have been something in the hospital. Who knows why? And I don't know why. And I've asked her about it, but she doesn't remember ever doing that. But I do. So and again, so have we? And I was asking Mark this: have we changed it as? I realize we're talking, you know, it's the 70s. You know, I'm 5-6 years old in the 70s, and things are progressively changed. Of course, technology makes things instant. We see things in real time that we would never have been able to see. When things are going on in Paris, France, we were able to look at Periscope and we can see what was going on live. And I kind of like the fact that we can witness these things. So it's we're there, we're part of it, we're able to respectfully. But have we changed so much? Have we is politically correct damaging us? I, to a certain extent, think yes, because. A couple of weeks ago, I was in a store, and an employee was talking to a manager and said, "This is my trigger word," and it was something goofy. This is my trigger word, and I'm like, okay, it was something that would have been an everyday word. It wasn't something, you know, and it makes me anxious and all that. And so now that she finally pulled her aside. I heard that part of it. She pulled her aside, and they had a big conversation. So I'm thinking now there's going to be a store meeting that, well, please don't say the word. Hopscotch. Who knows what it was?
Hopscotch.
But my point, you understand my point? I mean, we oversensitive? We can't say Merry Christmas in school. We can't say, you know, one of the other things as a kid, I was in elementary school in Clearwater, Florida, Dunedin Elementary, and we had a beautiful music teacher, and she happened to be Jewish, and she would play records, and I would hear Hava Nagila and all this stuff, and it was a great thing. I would go home and the songs in my head, and I'm Catholic. I didn't care. But why is this a problem for people? Part of that, I think, is part of the fact that we don't share these things is leading to the fact that we're afraid of these things. Thoughts?
Well, I don't know that you cannot say Merry Christmas in schools. I think you can. I think a lot of stores have people say Happy Holidays so that they can be more inclusive, because their job is to make sales, not to necessarily greet people with the greetings of the holiday. And they're trying to be as inclusive as possible. I think that you know, you can still have a robust discussion about things without political correctness kind of getting in the way. I think that's still possible. I think we're just more aware of the cases where people, you know, say things like they have a trigger word or and who knows why this person felt the way that they did.
But what I'm talking about though is the fact that we have these, we're so sensitive. Okay, a little bit of change, but sort of the same topic. I was amazed at how much traction Donald Trump got. And I you know, we'd watch the media sort of not know how to handle the fact that he had numbers that were just through the roof. We, of course, know some of the really despicable things he did during his rallies and things like that, and all the things he did. And we couldn't understand why the numbers were as high as they were. Well, I think what we have is a lot of people that are closeted in the sense that they agree with some of the things that he's saying. Like, I think there are people that don't want to be politically correct all the time. I think there are people that are upset with you know, who knows, not having a wall, you know. And while they'll publicly tell you, oh, I'm not for this, in the privacy of their home and their privacy of their own mind and heart and soul, they do agree with some of this. And the challenge is, they're having to back a guy that, in my opinion, I think is going to be really, really dangerous if he gets in the office. But only because he's got segments or bits and pieces, or maybe 4 or 5 bits and pieces of things that they agree with in the privacy of their home, but publicly can't say because they'd be shunned and shot down. Thoughts?
Well, I can tell you that there's a first of all, I'm not surprised at Donald Trump's success. I am surprised at his success in spite of his mouth. But again, going back to old white people vote, and Donald Trump ran in a Republican primary where there's nothing but old and white people voting all across the country. So yes, of course, he is going to be appealing to them because he's an authoritarian. He is a law and order candidate. He is going to build a wall to keep a fearful segment of the population out of the world. He is concentrating on keeping another fearful segment of the world population out with his ban on Muslims and the Syrian refugees.
Right.
So, of course, it appeals to that older white voter.
Right.
The thing is, the older white voter, when it comes to a general election, is a slight minority, not a big minority, just a slight minority. So that's why it's dangerous, and he could become president because there might be a lot of younger white voters that kind of think, yeah, you know what, it's time to upset the apple cart, so to speak. Or there might even be some people of color that are looking at the Democratic Party and saying, you know, they haven't given us what we want, let's reset it, you know. And these people will obviously be, everybody that votes for Trump is, in my opinion, voting against their own self-interest, because I think Trump is only in it for himself. But
no, I agree. And
right.
What
I think that we're not as fearful of inclusiveness as a lot of people would like us to believe.
Yeah, and that's you know, one of the things that's alarming me, at least with Donald Trump, and again, I don't want to get on a big thing. It's not meant to focus on Trump or anybody, but the fact that his
let me,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, PJ. Let me add one thing. I'll put it this way: we have, although they're going away, we have a tradition of Columbus Day parade.
Yes.
We have a tradition of St. Patrick's Day parade.
Yep.
These are long-standing traditions now. Even Cinco de Mayo is kind of an unofficial, let's go out and get drunk kind of holiday, but that's not really pertaining to this. But what I'm saying is the Columbus Day celebrations were an Italian immigrant thing. The St. Patrick's Day celebrations were an Irish immigrant thing. And those things were just as looked on with just as much scorn as building a wall and keeping out Muslims are to this day. So we've always had that going on, but thankfully we've had a larger segment of our country that says, yeah, come on in. So,
you know, and there's so much, and we could probably have several conversations about this. I think it's the smaller portions would need to be, how do we get people employed? How can we, Darren, you and I have talked about this before, where, once unemployment ended, there's really no way to measure these people that are not employed, because there's nothing saying that they're employed. There's no way to measure that. And because people fell off the rolls because they no longer qualified for any sort of assistance in that area, the numbers had nowhere to go but up or down in this instance. But so I don't think the real segment of the country that is unemployed is being measured, and that's a shame, because many politicians are using those numbers to say, hey, look, I'm doing wonders, when you really have nothing. People are starving and resorting to crime and murder to try to feed their families because they don't know what else to do. This is the thing. And then we got education, how we get people educated. I'll tell you what, and I know this is a fantasy and this is, craziness, but in this world, we in order to get better, you got to pay. If you aren't able to pay, we're going to let you die. If you aren't able to buy the medication, tough luck, you're going to die. Why? Why are we even, if anybody in any other segment of the world, if you just let somebody die and not do something, you could actually be charged with murder or negligence. But we've created a system where even to get medication, if you're elderly or if you've got cancer, or if you got anything else, you know what? If you can't afford it, you're not getting it. I wish if I could change everything, I would make education 100% free to all the way up to, do maybe something, do something to earn it, maybe volunteer a certain number of hours to get the free thing so that you're giving something back. So education, I think, is important. I think educated people are smarter people, and they're making better decisions. At least most of them do. We have the rare exception, but that we can't help that. I think politicians. I think we need to limit more offices. I don't think anybody in government office should be a lifetime appointee. I don't think should ever be allowed in office more than 2 terms. I think they should go. I think at a certain point they need to go. I think they can influence other ways. They can do other things. They can teach. They can help shape the minds of the future. But in my opinion, I think they need. And again, you guys may disagree with this, but I think we've got people that are in. I think it's North Carolina. I can't remember which. I'm not as smart as you guys about politics, but we've had people that have been in the House of Representatives and they die in the House of Representatives. And when they get to that age, they're not able to even get to the office because they're sick. Not that that's a horrible thing, but okay, they're now no longer effective. Why are we allowing this? That's no point to this.
Well, because no one votes. I don't believe in term limits because I believe in an increased voter turnout. With an increased voter turnout, you don't need term limits.
Well, and that's true too. And every time we turn around, we find ways that the government is different aspects of the politics are limiting people's ability to get to vote, IDs and redrawing lines and all sorts of stuff going on. And let's count inmates from other states in our jails as part of your constituency when in fact they're really not.
Even though they can't vote.
Right. Well, if I remember correctly, there are some states where they can vote. I think in Utah they can vote, and so what they do is they bring in ballots. But it's kind of like being in a college. Just because you're in jail there doesn't necessarily mean you're a resident there. You might be stuck there until you go home, wherever your home is. But the point is, the water is so muddy with all these things. Educate. Let's get people jobs. Let's pay them what they're worth. I don't want to pick up the phone and talk to a bank that has been given subsidies by the government to survive and talk to somebody in India. If you've been given money to survive, if you're being held up by us, if you're being supported by us, you damn well better be hiring people that inside the U.S. because I should not be talking to some guy in Manila that you're giving my information to outside of the country, access to my information to, when there are people here that need those jobs. And the fact that we as a society are allowing that to happen, hello people, dumb. At least I'm sorry, I'm being judgmental, but it's just stupid. We need people that need jobs, and we're farming them out, and yet we're paying the bank to survive. I don't know. Am I being stupid? Tell me I'm being stupid.
No, I'll give you a snapshot of a small community that I've been working out of. And this is true amongst a lot of towns in the citrus belt of Florida, but you can swap out the industry for whatever, and even swap out the population that's most effective. But let's take Lake Wales, for example. Lake Wales is a huge citrus town and still is. Right. A lot of money to be made in citrus and in sand mines. So historically, before, I don't know, like the 60s and 70s, I guess, the 80s, the African-American population would go work in the groves and do all the picking. And then the white owners of the groves and the white population would work in the service industry.
Right.
And everybody was making money. It wasn't idyllic, of course, and there was a lot of racial tensions, of course. There always are, but that's kind of what happened. And then something happened, which you can do your own research, where they were allowed to have guest workers come in and pick the fruit themselves, and then unemployment in the African-American population soared. You can liken it to a plant closing in the South, or the plant closing, the textile mills closing before they moved to the South and the Northeast, to see what happens to a community when the big money-making operation either moves or shifts. And now you have a rampant crime rate. Now you have gun ownership going through the roof, and you have people that are clinging to an authoritarian style of government because they want to see law and order, because they want to see people that don't have not take what they want. Now, can that be fixed overnight? No, but it can be fixed with addressing problems that led to it, and also addressing the fact that it will be a slow process to get that community healed and back together again. It's already happening in places like Haines City and Winter Haven,
Right.
where the economy is starting to kind of attract a different and more diverse set of people that are coming in, a more educated population. And you're seeing that the political lines are being redrawn as this more educated population comes in and aligns itself with groups that have already been there. So you're seeing change happen, and it's for the better. It's just a slow process. This year we have one of our political parties. Actually, I'll say this let me say both political parties. Hillary Clinton and the Democrats have a platform to reinstate a public option to the Affordable Care Act. And even Donald Trump says that he doesn't want to see people dying in the streets. So I guess there's hope that maybe we will take better care of those less fortunate that live in our country. Because it's the only way we can succeed as a whole.
Here. I have to go, guys.
All right. No, you guys.
I do too.
No, this has been good. We can call it to a close. I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you guys very much for being a part of this. More often than not, people follow these things afterwards, especially on Facebook Live, because people have lives and I don't. So, thank you very much for your time. I want you to know I view you guys as smarter than I'll ever be. And I think you guys have the pulse on more things than I do. And I appreciate you allowing me to use your intelligence to make me look more intelligent. So you guys have Mark, thank you very much. Do you have anything you want to plug before you go?
Nah.
No?
I'm good.
Darren, do you have anything you want to plug or say before you go?
Just stay woke.
Stay woke? Yeah. Yeah. All right, you guys
Look
have
it up if you need to.
I will. You guys have a great day, and thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, PJ.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to call it a day. We've had a great conversation here. It kind of went a little off, and I apologize. It's just the way I am. Be kind to one another. Just be tolerant of things that are different. Learn. Not everything's great, but not everything's bad. Let's not lose sight of where we are. A lot of people are hurting out there. Check on your neighbors. Check on your friends. Say hello. Remember, you don't have to respect everybody. And although some people will be different with me on this, but show them common courtesy. Be nice. Yes, please. No, thank you. And if they don't deserve that, then just walk away. This has been PJ and Friends. My name is PJ Pentelio. If you want, you can follow us on PJandFriends.com. If you're following us on Facebook, thank you very much. If you would, please mark it so that if we go live, you can be notified of this. I'm going to download this and put it elsewhere. So if you are not on Facebook currently or whatever, go to PJandFriends.com, click on the Facebook link, and that will take you to the Facebook page, and you can like us. Make it that simple, all right? You guys have a great day. This has been PJ and Friends, and one moment.
You're listening to PJ and Friends. PJ and Friends. The PJ and Friends Radio Network. Orlando, Ocala, and Tampa Bay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call it to a close. You guys have a great evening. Be safe, and we'll talk to you later.